Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the stories in some of our favorite games and ask the tough questions to figure out what is right and what is wrong. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're returning to Season 4 of Telltale Games The Walking Dead, this time covering Episode 3. In case you missed any of the previous episodes, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down the series, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. Episode 3 of Season 4 of Telltale's The Walking Dead is titled Broken Toys, and we find ourselves joining the group, or what's left of it, a few hours after Lily and her group left. The fires have been put out, but there's still some cleanup to be done, and Mitch needs to be buried. But all of that comes secondary to finding out where Lily took Lewis, Asim, and Omar. To help with that, Abel has been tied up and stored in the basement for interrogation, and Violet lets Clem know that he's waiting down there with AJ. My first thought was, really? You left him with AJ? The kid that wants revenge for Abel putting shrapnel on his side? But once that cleared, I wondered what would be needed to get the information out. Ethically, harming him in any way to get information is walking a fine line. There is, of course, the concept of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, brought to us by Spock. But this concept is really just a simplification of a subject known as utilitarianism, where the moral good is measured based on the overall impact an action has on the broader group as opposed to the individual. Utilitarianism could easily be used to justify harming Abel if that action gains information that saves the group and prevents future harm. And the concept can really be applied pretty widely in this episode as a whole, as we'll see some pretty questionable things later on. But for now, we can focus on Abel and getting the location of Lily's local base out of him. The interrogation on its own would likely be completely useless though, as Abel isn't really afraid of being hurt and he seems to almost enjoy it. The real breakthrough comes when he realizes his internal injuries from falling at the end of the last episode are going to kill him. He confesses he doesn't want to become a zombie, saying that he doesn't want his body to be in control of his mind, and he offers to give you the location if you promise to end him and make sure he doesn't turn. And that is a promise that's easy to make and keep. He gets what he wants, and we get what we want. He could lie about the location, sure, but he could do that either way, and by the time that we would scout out and return, he would likely be dead from his injuries, so it makes sense to make the concession. And it turns out Abel was telling the truth, as we scout out after dealing with him and find a big riverboat crawling with raiders. We even see Lewis being pulled along one of the decks, confirming the kids are there. Once we've scouted the area and come up with a plan for attack, we find ourselves going back to see James to ask for his help with the rescue mission. Before we can talk to him about it though, we're forced to make a couple of choices, as he asks for our help in recovering his mask. His camp was messed up by the raiders, and he wasn't able to grab it before the zombies overran him, driving him away and leaving him vulnerable. He asks Clem to help get it back, but he also asks her to not kill any of the zombies. Now, for a moment, we'll set aside the fact that he could just toss a rock and draw them away. You know, the thing he taught us to do in the last episode. And we'll instead focus on James's philosophy, because I think it's worth talking about. After what he saw when he was with the Whisperers, and because of his own actions that he discusses with us later in the episode, he has become a staunch pacifist. Now, generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with trying to minimize violence, and that would even be a goal of humanism, as violence typically leads to negative outcomes and detracts from human well-being. That being said, there is such a thing as being too pacifistic, and James kind of straddles that line as he strives to not kill anyone or anything unless it is absolutely necessary for survival. He also admits, after we help him and ask for his help, that he sees zombies as another form of human. This confession comes after he shows us a barn full of zombies he's been saving, and it opens a completely new can of worms. Practically speaking, even if we don't agree with him, going along with whatever he says is the smart move as we need his help. But his ideas merit a closer look. Very basically, he thinks that when someone dies and reanimates, a part of who they were before remains active. This is something that can't really be proven, but it also can't really be dismissed outright, as there is a possibility that the part of the brain responsible for conscious thought would come back as well, allowing the person to sort of go along for the ride as they eat and kill. I did cover consciousness in another video recently, so I'll link that here in case you're interested. But suffice to say, we don't really know what makes you, you, and we can't rule out that part being active in some way when someone reanimates. And that kind of makes things worse for those who turn in a way. Imagine having to watch as you do horrible things while having no control over your actions. On the other hand, the conscious brain could be in a dream state rather than a watchful one, meaning the person would have no idea that they were dead or that they were eating other people. They could be sitting on a beach somewhere in their mind as they chomp down on Jimmy from accounting. But does that make it wrong to kill them? Should we be prioritizing distracting zombies instead of taking them out? There's no easy answer here, and it's really up to the individual how they want to handle things. Personally, I would almost view them as a new species of carnivorous animal and make a habit of avoiding them. Defenses can be built to keep them out of communities, and unless there's a direct threat to a living person, there isn't really much reason to take them out. As far as James' general pacifism, while it is noble to want peace, it's also important to realize that there are some people out there that just won't let that happen. For one reason or another, there are people who want nothing more than to cause chaos and destruction, and being a pacifist won't increase your odds of survival when you run into them. At the end of the day, you have to be willing to live with yourself, and you have to ask yourself what actions cross a line for you. Getting back into the story, we follow Clem and AJ back into the school after convincing James to help us, and we find Ruby planning a party. She wants to enjoy the last night before they go after the Raiders, and she asks you to help her plan it when you get a chance. The party itself, from a story perspective, is really about giving us some more backstory on the characters and making the place feel more like a home for Clem and AJ. But it's also one of those moments that really sets a high bar for what the series could be. We get the chance to interact with everyone and pick things like the candle color, music, and banner decorations. And we learn why the kids we are starting to see as a family wound up in Erickson's boarding school in the first place. For all the criticism I give this game, with the flaws in the writing and sometimes unbelievable actions the characters take, this scene is one of those that I can really admit pulled me in. I was even laughing along with them and was really moved by the song Violet was singing. Then AJ blows out a candle, and Telltale produces one of the most emotional scenes in the entire series by putting Clementine back on the train from Season 1. We're back talking to Lee, but it isn't like the flashback from Season 2. This is an obvious dream, with Clementine even being aware of the fact that Lee is the Lee inside her head, acting as a conscience and helping her sort through difficult emotions. We even see Clem change mid-scene from the little girl that Lee knew into who she is in the present, with him commenting on how she's grown. But the dream can only last so long before Clem is awoken by AJ, as the time to attack the Raiders has arrived. As we're preparing for battle, Clem and James have a brief sidebar where James reveals a bit more of his past, using the story as a lesson to highlight what he thinks AJ might become if the boy isn't taught that killing shouldn't be easy. And that's a lesson I think is often lost in The Walking Dead, as we see zombies being taken down with no thought and people being caught up in things like revenge. There have been so many instances in this series where being more violent than necessary was an option, and there have even been times where people have commented how they felt good watching Carver being taken out by Kenny, or saying that killing another character like Ben was good because of what his actions had caused. One of the biggest flaws in humanity is the idea of retribution, and that punishment is somehow always right when someone makes a mistake. Those concepts make it easy to justify causing harm and bring down humanity as a whole. It might feel good in the moment when the supposed bad guy gets their comeuppance, but in reality it should never be something we take pleasure in. If killing or causing harm becomes easy, we've lost our humanity and any hope of actually building a better future for those who come after. With some help from James's zombie friends and a little luck, Clem, Violet, and AJ reach the boat, planting a bomb in the boiler room and locating their captive friends before things go sideways. Minerva is guarding Lewis, Asim, and Omar, and with a little convincing, she opens the door to Lewis's cell. But the whole thing turns out to be a trap, as she knocks Clem out and locks the other two in another cell. There's a back and forth with Lily that follows, as the woman tries to convince Clementine that their community is actually good, despite the propensity to steal children. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, the idea of utilitarianism is seen here as well, as the idea Lily is spouting follows loosely the idea that the suffering of a few is permissible to benefit the well-being of the many. The Delta is involved in a war with some other community, though the details of how that war started and who all is involved fail to make themselves known. And the solution the Delta came up with to try and give themselves an advantage was to find as many children as they could and indoctrinate them into becoming cannon fodder. At that point, it isn't sacrificing a few to save the many, because the ones being sacrificed weren't involved to begin with. I'll use an example to explain the difference. On one hand, you have a burning building with some people trapped inside. One group of 30 people is locked inside a room, and the other group, consisting of 5 people, are trapped behind some fallen debris. Moving the debris would allow you to free the 5 people, but it would also bury the key to the door that the 30 people are trapped behind. You only have enough time to either move the debris or grab the key and open the door, but not enough time to do both. Utilitarianism would mean grabbing the key and saving the 30 at the expense of the 5. On the other hand, with what Delta is doing, you have the same burning building, but there are only 30 people inside and they are trapped behind a wall of fire. Delta is grabbing random people off the street and pushing them into the building, hoping that enough bodies will stamp out the fire and allow the 30 to go free. There's no circumstance in which you can justify the actions of Delta in the second illustration. What they are doing is wrong, no matter how much they want it to be right. And all of that is without mentioning that they cut out Lewis's tongue because he wouldn't stop talking, which easily falls under cruel and unusual punishment. To push things even further, Lily gets mad at Violet for speaking up as well, and orders one of her minions to cut one of the girl's hands off as punishment. AJ intervenes before she can do it though, biting off the ear of the woman and apparently earning Lily's admiration as she sees a potential in AJ as a good fighter. Lily takes AJ away, and Clem and the others manage to escape not long after, with Clem going to find Lily as the rest leave the boat before it explodes. And she does manage to locate AJ, as Lily is explaining to him how weak his group is, and within a matter of moments all hell breaks loose as Ten shows up, stealing one of the guards' guns and pointing it at Lily in an attempt to free his friends. But Ten isn't willing to shoot Lily, and she gains the upper hand for a moment before AJ bites her hand and Clem steps in to assist. After a brief struggle, AJ winds up pointing a gun at Lily as she tries to surrender, and we have the choice to either tell AJ to stand down or let him shoot her. She's obviously lying about surrendering to try to save her own ass, but the right thing to do is to convince AJ to lower the gun. She's been beaten, and we need to teach AJ when killing is warranted and when it isn't. In a normal circumstance, we would keep situational awareness and make sure she doesn't have the chance to regain the upper hand. But because this is a Telltale game, James puts his back to Lily in order to get the gun from AJ, and Clem apparently closes her eyes and misses Lily picking back up the knife. In a matter of a second, she stabs James in the back and gets the gun. Before she can act, though, the bomb in the boiler goes off and the episode ends. All in all, I would say this episode might be one of my favorites of the series, and it's definitely the best of the season so far. There was a good mix of action and downtime, with some great character moments, and even the end wasn't as bad as some of the other episodes we've played. There is one episode left in the series, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Telltale sends off Clementine and AJ. Will they get the happy ending they deserve, or will things end on a sour note? Between now and then, though, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of seeing Lee on the train? Did you use less than ethical methods to get the information out of Abel? Did you give him what he wanted? Did you have AJ shoot Lily? For anyone who would like to support the channel in other ways and get cool perks like their name in the videos and early access, I've got a Patreon and channel memberships that give you access to behind-the-scenes content and members-only videos. You'll also get my undying gratitude and the chance for Lee to visit you in your dreams. That's all I've got for now. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.